you do not understand white supremacy, what it is, and how it works, everything else that you do understand will confuse you. In all of these 9 areas of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Anywhere on the planet, minute by minute, day by day, all of the time, all of the time, all of the time.
Alrighty, well, welcome to another edition of the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. You can also call this show the CRCS, same thing, Counter-Racist Code Show. To get in contact with the show, just call this number, 516-453-9921. And when you do that, hit the press the number 1 button, and you will go to the very top of the line, and you will be next up on Mr. Fuller. Also, you can Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com, and you will go into a rotation, and as time permits, I will get to read your email, and I will inform you when your email is read, date and time, so that if you want to play it back, if you're busy right now, you can play it back and find out and listen to the answer or suggestion to your question, so you can do that. Let's see here. You can also do this. This show is going to speak about codification. We must always operate under a code. Why? Because a code works every time. Without it, you have what we have going on now, chaos. But Mr. Fuller will talk about that all throughout this program, and any other program you hear him, it's always about the code. So let me get out of the way and let me introduce to some and present to others Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Good morning, Mr. Fuller, and how are you?
Good morning. I'm still learning.
Okay, Mr. Fuller. Let's see here. I'll tell you what. Somebody, Ivory, has a question, so let's see here. Let me see if I can get him over here. Okay. Ivory, you are first in line. What is your question for Mr. Fuller?
Yay. Thank you so much. I hope everyone is having a great morning. So I had a couple of questions, but I know we like to do one question at a time, and I don't know if the time is on my side for me to ask multiple questions. But that's why I tried to get in first, just for that. So I'm a part of, a group known as the Millennials, anybody born from 1981 to 1996. And a lot of people say that this generation is, the most, illiterate. We don't read books. We don't, we don't have any urge to learn anything new, figure out things on our own. So my generation is, big on social media, big on platforms that, require internet, telephones, things like that. So I just really want to know how to, and most of my generation, their spouses are white and they're non-white. Most of my generation thinks that entertainment is the most important aspect of life on the planet, just because of what, they see or whatnot. So I'm just trying to figure out how can I, reach the masses, reach my generation, reach the younger people that know that, it's not even a debate now to whether racism is real or not. We know that. It's not a debate now whether they lied to us in our history books. We know that. It's not a debate now, in 2020, things should no longer be a debate. You know what I mean? We know it's here. So I know that, I kind of want to get my, generation up on this code. How do I get my generation up on the code? And then, I guess that's my first question.
Well, code is all about what's a code for in any generation. It's about getting things done. Now it comes down to this one question. What are you trying to do? If you're trying to get something done, so it comes down to what is it that people try to do? What people try to do, if you look at people and listen to them talk and look at the things that we get up in the morning and then go to bed at night and get up the next morning, and what do we do during that time? Most of it is about solving problems. So all code is about solving problems. So you don't have to put it in a box that addresses racism directly, but you can put it in this world view of problem solving and say, if black people get in a mentality, regardless of what generation you're in, if any people get into the mentality of problem solving in the most constructive manner with the aim, first of all, having the aim of being quality people. Quality people means you'll produce quality relationships. And quality relationships are all about solving problems that people have between people, first of all, and then solving other problems that involve people solving problems. So it comes down to just get that focus. And in answer to the question directly, how do you get people on board with that, is simply to ask them questions. And we go here to page 171 and 172 of the compensatory code book, and it always comes down to just those 4 wants, and everything flows from that. And what are the ways that you talk about the 4 wants? Point by point, you do it by saying, what do I want to do? Why do I want to do it? How do I plan to do it? And what do I expect the constructive result to be? Now, if you're looking for a starting point, and you can keep raising these points every minute of the day, really, anywhere you happen to be on the planet, because it applies to everybody. It applies to all creatures, including animals. Animals want to do something. A bird flying through the air wants to go from the top of that lamppost to a tree. And then maybe in a few seconds later, like you see birds do, they suddenly take off south. And then later on, 3 hours later, they come back, same bird, if you recognize it, might have distinctive features where you can, people who do bird watching, comes flying back over going north. Now, why did the bird do that? The bird wanted to do that. For what reasons, the bird knows best. So it's the same with people. People want to do something each and every day. So it's the 4 wants. What do I want to do? Why do I want to do it? How do I plan to do it? And what do I expect the constructive result to be? So in talking with people, trying to get people, to think on another level, which what your question is about, getting people to think about something else other than just entertainment. Or even if they're thinking about entertainment, people usually want to keep thinking about the things that they choose to think about. And the things that people think about are the things that they want to talk about. Otherwise, you were kind of invading their thought space, you might say. And people do not like that. People like to think about and do the things that they are interested in doing, not the things that you think they ought to be interested in doing. In particular, the black people, they bristle up real quick when you start invading their thought space about what they ought to be doing. You tell a black person what they ought to be doing, they immediately tighten up because they're told too much of that. I mean, the way that they see it. Somebody in the world, or teachers are telling them this, their mother's telling them this, their father's telling them this, the people in up and down the block that they know are telling them, well, what you ought to be doing is this. And so at an early age, they become resistant to that. We become resistant to it. So that's got to be understood. So the compensatory logic is you take people not from where you think they ought to be. You take them from where they really are. And the best way to do that, the best way for people to be led is for them to lead themselves. And you can do that by asking questions. Because when you ask a question, you cause a person to do what? Think. So those questions, rather than say, what do I want to do, because you always start with that, because what you want to do is have somebody else think at another level. You just said so. So how do you get them to do the same thing, to think at another level? You say, what do you want to do? Question one, why do you want to do it? Because people should have a reason for wanting to do what they want to do. You say, well, I want to have a good time. Well, you never interfere with the answers and never dictate about what a person should be doing. You always just make suggestions, but you save that for later. The main thing you want to do is find out where the person's mind is in answer to your question, right at that moment when you ask that question. So you start with, what is it you want to do? Why do you want to do it? And listen very carefully to their answers. Then move to the third question. How do you plan to do it? This thing you want to do, how do you plan to do it? And listen very carefully to the answer. They might say something like, well, I don't have a plan, Well, do you think you need to get one? If you want to do it and you're dead set on doing it, a plan for doing it seems to make sense to me. You can throw in all kinds of intermittent questions, but get back to the basic questions, those four. And then the last one is really important. What do you expect the constructive result to be? Now, a person doing this virus thing, for example, may say, well, what do you want to do? They say, well, what I want to do is for this virus to go away, or for them to tell me I can come out of the house, or them to open up something so I can go get my hair done. Because right now people are discussing that, opening hair salons in some places. And say, oh, you want to get in there and have your hair done. Okay, why do you want to have your hair done? And don't interfere with the answer. Don't argue. Just listen for the answer to the question. The person knows what their answer is. You already have your answers, maybe and maybe not. But you want the person's answer. Why do you want to have your hair done in the middle of a virus epidemic? Well, just because I want to look good. Look good to whom, I mean, you might ask that question verbally, or you might just think about it, all right? Well, I feel better about myself. Whatever answer the person gives is okay. You just move on to the next question after they give you that answer and say, okay, well, how do you plan to do it? Well, the first place that opens, I plan to be down there in line right quick. Okay, all right, that's your plan. And what do you expect the constructive result to be? And then you can ask the same question. When the word starts getting around in the neighborhood that somebody that went to that hair salon was carrying the virus, then you can ask, what do you want to do? Same questions over again. Why do you want to do it? You're going back there, down there again? All right, to get your nails done? Okay. Now it's 3 people, 5 people. Now the reports are coming out, and they close the place again. But now 400 people got the virus. See? But you don't have to say all this because you don't even know that this is going to happen. But like I said, those 4 questions could be used anywhere at any time, under any circumstance, any time of day or night. And people, then you are what you're doing right then, you are communicating with people, which is what you want to do. You don't want to argue with people. Black people should be out of the argument business. Black people should never have arguments with anybody. And the best way to avoid arguments is to put everything that you say in the form of a question. And those are 4 of the basic questions that will fit anywhere, anytime, with anybody.
Okay. What's your second question, Ivory?
Thank you so much. That was great. So I just started diving into the book, and I see a lot where it says that when this power system was created or established. Now, and I don't see anywhere in the book where it says, that they established this power to protect white genetics. I guess I got that from Dr. Cresswelsing. She said that they do this. They have the system of white supremacy to protect white genetics, so they don't have white genetic annihilation. But I don't see that anywhere in the book. I just want to know if you believe that that is why. I also see in the book that you said they do this because it's ego producing and it's just it makes them feel good. But I also want to know how you feel about what Dr. Cresswelsing said and if you believe that that is true. And also, should we be studying the time before the system was created, before white supremacy was created on the planet? And that's it.
Okay, Mr. Fuller?
Okay, in answer to the second question, I don't know anything about genetics, and I haven't studied it. So I could not be given, I could not offer an intelligent answer on that. And what Dr. Wilson said about it, you can listen to that, consider it, study it, and take the studies further. But you'll get no answer from me on genetics. But I do know the results of what the white supremacists get from it, and that is what everybody wants, because I go to the logic of what does everybody want? What does every bird want? Every rhinoceros, every tiger, every bee, every ant, every fly, and every person. What do they want? Well, history has shown, and the evidence shows, people want 3 things, basically, and their conduct shows it. You go by the evidence. Everybody, they want 3 things: fun, glory, and material comfort. 1, 2, 3. Number 1, fun. People want fun. They want glory. What is glory? Glory is being thought of in a manner that you think that people ought to think about you. You want to impress people. People, I just talked about a couple of things, hairdos and, and even tattoos and nails done. You want to put an impression on somebody, maybe starting with yourself. But then you like to expand that and say, a person sometime will go and buy a diamond ring. They just don't want to sit there and stare at it all day themselves. They want somebody else to kind of look at it, while they're sitting there in the cafe. I mean, you got this sparkling diamond ring. So you're not hiding your hands under the table. I mean, you keep putting your fingers up so that the person sitting across the table from you can see the sparkle in that diamond ring and maybe even start a conversation about it, all right? That's glory. That's glory. You want to be noticed. Everybody wants to be noticed for something or another. Even homeboy, when he throws a brick through a window, standing in a crowd of people, just pick up a brick and throw it through a window. Why? Because ain't nobody paying me no attention. My folks didn't pay me no attention. They just talking to each other, sitting around the dinner table. I was a little boy. Nobody never paid me no attention, and I'm just standing there listening to them all day, and nobody never paid me no attention. So I'm going to get some attention if I have to throw a brick through a window. All right? I usually use that homeboy thing, to kind of say something about us when we're typical under the system of racism. Right. So those are just illustrations in answer to your question of what is it we want. So what do the white supremacists want? Fun, glory, and material comfort. And they have figured out a way through the system of white supremacy to get it through the system of white supremacy. And that's why they don't want to turn loose to it. You tell a white supremacist that he can no longer practice racism, he practically wants to strangle himself or strangle the person that told him that, because they say, what value do I have? What do I have to look forward to? This is what makes me want to get up in the morning. I mean, I'm a racist. If I can't practice racism, what's the point in breathing? Why? Because I get fun out of it, more fun than anybody could ever get. And I get glory. I'm looked up to. People get off the sidewalk from my ancestors, when I walk by as a racist. All right? People bow down to me. People are enchained by me. All right? People work for me while I sit on the porch and sip mint julep. Boy, that's a lot of fun. And that's a lot of glory. I mean, a black person standing there fanning me all day. And I turn around and say, all right, Mandy, that's enough of that fanning. Go get me a lemonade or another mint julep. All right? And then you can come back and fan me some more if it's too hot. All right, but don't fan too close because it might disturb my sleep. Oh, boy, man, and that's material comfort, too. It's a lot of comfort that goes with racism.
Mm-hmm. All right.
I don't know if I answered the question or not, but those are just some ideas.
Yes. Ivory, thank you so much for your call, and don't be a stranger.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay, again, you are listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby, and if you would like to get in contact with the show, you can by calling 516-453-9921, or you can Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, at gmail.com. Okay, from the Gmails, we have Daryl. He says, Mr. Fuller, can you speak about the prison conditions we're living up under right now as we speak with this called COVID-19 deal? I ask because the more I sit back and observe, I see all the aspects of being on lockdown, police being sent out to break up even random, non-threatening gatherings of black people while white folk can gather as much as they like. Business owners afraid to even go back into their businesses just to check on things for fear some casual observer may rat them out to the police. I see families and friends who have to stand behind a glass door or car window and touch the glass because we're not allowed to touch or embrace any longer, just like it is when a prisoner gets a visitor. So my question for you, Mr. Fuller, just looking at this as the astute and wise observer that you are, where do you foresee these lockdown rules heading towards, even after this coronavirus passes on and we get back to some level of normalcy?
I don't know, but I will see if we're around, and that is if it follows a general pattern. If we are prisoners of war, and then you have a virus breaking out, I mean, in a condition of war, you have people going at each other, fighting each other, or some people fighting other people who don't want to fight. I mean, they're just tired of fighting. And that's the case of black people for the most part. We're tired of fighting racism, but then the racists want to just keep fighting to keep the system of racism going. But in the middle of that, a virus breaks out. So just like if you're a prisoner of war, which is what I consider myself to be, well, a virus breaks out in a prison, that's an awful thing because prisoners are all bunched together. And black people are bunched together in different sections of towns and whatnot. Yeah, that's over there in the colored section, as they say, the black section of town. Oh, you don't want to go over there. You don't want to walk over there anytime, late at night, because that's a dangerous place to be. Even for the people who are there, the black people among each other, they're dangerous to each other. And so don't go over there. Nothing but danger, nothing but misery over there. So like in any jail, that's what a jail is for, to be a bunch of miserable people. And so when a virus breaks out in a prison, just a bunch of miserable people go shuffling in line, standing in line for hours. Getting shots and whatnot if there's any to be given. If there's anything left over to stave the virus off, and line it up to get their food regularly or whatnot. So that's typical. And the callers just said that, you see symptoms of a prison-like condition. Well, that's what you see prisoners do. Prisoners of war, you see them in lines, all right? And a lot of white people are being made prisoners of the virus, okay? And so it's enough misery to go around in that count for everybody. But the black people who have the added factor of color and the ramifications of what their status is in a world dominated by racism, being prisoners of war in the middle of a virus condition, we're going to get the worst of it. And the paper's already saying that. Well, it kind of looks like black people and white people are saying this in their studies. Including the white supremacists who are probably saying, yeah, no better for them. Let them suffer. They're around here talking about their rights and whatnot. When the virus comes around, they got to depend on us to even tell them what the virus is, because they can't handle it. They can't handle nothing, because we have never taught them to handle nothing but each other with a gun or a knife or a whole lot of curse words. That's all we let them have. And let them do plenty of that. But when it comes to doing anything that makes sense, it's off limits for black people in the system of racism. So naturally, in this environment, what we can expect, what I expect, is for things to get worse, and get worse for white people to a lesser degree, as it always is, until this thing plays out. And then hopefully after it's all over, and I don't have a whole lot of faith in this hope, but I hope that we'll be at another level, a better level than where we started with before this virus. But to use an old cliche, I'm not holding my breath for that one, because I tend to believe we'll revert right back to type.
Okay, I'm going to hold it right there, but as I take this break, I want you to answer this question, Mr. Fuller, on the other side of the break. Do you feel that the corona quarantine will lead to the cashless society and the conversion of America into a communist party? I want you to think about that. While I do this, you are listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. You can also call it the CRCS, and I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. You can get in contact with the show by calling 516-453-9921 to ask Mr. Fuller your question. Please make your questions concise so that Mr. Fuller can answer your question fully. Or you can also email me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com, and I will read your email at some point, maybe not on this show, but I will read it, and I will contact you to let you know when your when your Gmail has been read. I'll give you the time, and you can review that at your pleasure. Okay, the Counter Racist Culture with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. and I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. All right, Mr. Fuller, before we continue on, I had a minute to think about that. I'll ask the question again. It was brought up about the corona quarantine will lead to a cashless society and a conversion of America into a communist society. What might be your thought on that particular thought?
Well, as far as the cashless society is concerned, it depends on what the white supremacists decide, like everything. If they want a cashless society, we'll have one. They're in charge. That's what white supremacy means. Nobody else tells them what to do. I don't know of anybody that tells them what to do and they got to do it. I don't know of anybody on the planet with that kind of muscle or with that kind of influence. No, they do what they want to do. So if the white supremacists decide this minute, well, you know what? We're going to have a cashless society. Now, who's going to tell them, no, we are not? I can't find anybody. I don't know of any black person that can walk up and say, oh, no, you're not. You're going to have it just like I want it. Well, good luck with that. I've never seen it happen, ever. Never heard of it happening, ever. Doesn't work like that.
Okay.
That's what white supremacy means. Now, the second part was what now? I've slipped my mind.
The conversion of America into a communist society.
Well, first of all, I don't know what that means. I used to talk about communism when I was wearing an army uniform, and I talked about Yugoslavian communism for about 8 months, off and on. And even to this day, I didn't even know what I was talking about, even though I got a commendation for doing it, okay? And I have found in trying to listen to people talk about communism, socialism, this, that, and all, all the different isms. And I'm saying capitalism, communism, socialism, and I've never got a coherent answer from anybody in all the things I've read about where are the dividing lines clear. See, I hear a lot of words, but, when it comes down to actually what people do, what do you mean by socialism or communism? What's the difference between communism and socialism? What's the difference between capitalism and socialism or communism? I don't have a clear idea. I do have a clear idea of what racism is. That's very clear to me. That's real blunt. I mean, that is very distinctive. And I concluded, and I say so in the textbook for victims of white supremacy, that when you start talking about royalism, when anybody starts talking about it, this is what I do. Royalism, capitalism, communism, socialism, fascism, those are some big isms. I say the white supremacists are all of those isms simultaneously. They are the greatest communists in the world, by whatever definition you want to use. They are the greatest socialists in the world. They are the greatest capitalists in the world. They're the greatest fascists in the world. And last but not least, they are the supreme royalists of all time. Royalism means like emperors and empresses, kings and queens. That's royalism. The white supremacists are all of them. That's why I never understood any of them, any of these words, because they are all of them. That's all I've ever known. White supremacy, white supremacy, white supremacy. I don't care how you shake it up and forward. all of that comes tumbling out of the glass. And all of it has the stamp of white supremacy on it, being the greatest influence. So these are just words that people play with. But the only real government on the planet is the system of white supremacy. That's the conclusion I made, and I'm sticking with it until somebody can show me where there's another government on the planet that's superior to the government of the system of white supremacy. I have
so white
never
supremacy
seen it.
is the top dog.
It eradicates all other governments. All
Okay.
other governments are just governments in words. They'll say
Okay.
this, well, they have this socialist system here. They got this semi-capitalist system here. They're creeping into a communist society here. No. You got one government on the planet, and the name of that government in capital letters is the system of white supremacy. And everything else is just a whole lot of talk about nothing.
Okay. Well, let's do this. This comes from Gigi, and she says this. Mr. Fuller, who wrote the white supremacist code, and how did all white supremacists get using all their code and use it so efficiently and don't deviate from it? Let me read that again to make sure I read it as she wrote it. Who wrote the white supremacist code, and how did the all white supremacists get using their code and use it so efficiently and don't deviate from it?
Okay, an answer to the first question is, if I had to name a person, I don't know. But presumably a white person started it. I don't think a black person thought it up and handed it to the white people about how to practice white supremacy, and that person is black. Well, that person could have very easily have said, hey, I'm going to come up with an idea of black supremacy, and that's what we would have had if that had taken off. I mean, in the same fashion. But evidently it was a white person that came up with the idea, and it turned out to be the most powerful political and religious idea ever conceived in the minds of people in recorded history. There's nothing in recorded history that matches it. So who started it and when, I really don't know. But in the way that it caught on is that it has so many benefits to it. My goodness, the benefits are tremendous. That all you have to do is just be, quote, unquote, lucky enough to be born white. And you got a leg up on everything. And that's a wonderful position to be in. And if you're unlucky enough, quote, unquote, to be born black, now you're automatically a prisoner of war. You're born into a prison system called the prison, and the name of that prison is the system of white supremacy. You're born in a prison. And if they're going to put it on the prison walls, what's the name of this prison? It would be the system of white supremacy. Cell block 4, okay? Because all over the planet, the system of white supremacy has people of color in cell blocks. Even the neighborhoods where black people are in high concentrations look like prison camps. Whether you're talking about shanty towns and whatnot, that looks like a prison camp, okay? And you see armed people walking around, soldiers and whatnot, and patrolling through there. You can call them law enforcement officers in some places. In some places, they actually look like what you call traditional soldiers. They're riding in jeeps, machine guns mounted, all right? Just like you see in a prisoner of war camp. And you see among black people in the northwestern hemisphere, lots of concrete and wire, very little grass in some places. Grass doesn't grow where you have black people, all right? Well, you know when you're around a whole lot of white people, when you see a whole lot of pretty green grass everywhere. Everything is pretty. You don't see, a lot of graffiti all over everything, where people in their anguish, they just say, I feel like busting loose. Now, I don't know how to bust loose, so I don't want to get in jail for the greater confinement, they call it, because I'm already in jail. So I'm just going to take some paint, and I'm going to go all over these streets, because I don't own nothing around here no way. Why should I make it look pretty? And I'm just going to spray paint on everything. I mean, put my name on it, whatnot, Junebug, Jazz, Bo, Jackson, okay, and whatever, all right, hip-hop heaven, just say anything, scrawl anything on it. It ain't mine no way. I mean, I paid for it, but I don't have no jurisdiction over it, so I'm just going to mess it up, even though I got to be right here in the midst of it. I mean, I might as well put stuff on the wall with my name on it. I might as well own it or act like I own it, because there ain't nothing around me but a whole bunch of trash that they won't collect and rats running up and down on the side of the street at midnight, and I got to hop out of the way of them. I mean, so that's what brings that on. So you got these prison-like conditions, and so you act like a prisoner. Prisoners spite each other, cuss each other out, sit around doing nothing all day but tattooing, and that's what black people, in many instances, not in all, but all too many, that's what we do. Because we say, what am I worth? I'm just a prisoner. I'm institutionalized, as they say in Shawshank Redemption, the movie. I'm institutionalized, born institutionalized. So that's how we got to think that way. That's how we act that way. And the white supremacists say, we like it like that. Why? Because it gives me what? The three things that I mentioned before. Fun, glory, and material comfort. A whole lot of material comfort.
Okay. Tell you what we're going to do here, Mr. Fuller. Usually I do it at the 45-minute mark, but we are close to it. But let's do this right now. Since we're talking about codification continually, even with all of the examples that you give, and by the way, thanks to all the listeners that are listening. I have never seen this many listeners before. I'm able to see it on the board now. So I want to thank you, and your opinions are welcome because I have a chat board here, and I can see some of your opinions, and you're not ruining the show, by the way, thing that you have to say. There's no positive or negative. It's just your opinion, and sometimes I'll have a chance to read some of it or mention some of it. Not necessarily mentioning your name, but mentioning your comment. But all of them are welcome. Pro or con, it doesn't matter, because this is a pure, open forum. Mr. Fuller and I do not sit down and rehearse whatever it is that we're going to say. We just let it go. It is full of mistakes and everything else. It's life. That's just the way that it is. It's not perfect. It is being perfected, but it's not perfect. So we invite your comments, and again, thank you for listening. Now, it is at this particular time that we will have Mr. Fuller speak about the book that I'm going to suggest that you want to have in your library. Mr. Fuller, please speak about your book, where we can get it, and the latest information on it.
That's the latest information. You can get the book by going to producejustice.com. producejustice.com. And it covers a lot of what I've been saying so far on the air, on this program and in previous programs. And the book is all in the book for the most part. The things that I'm saying now over this venue is in the book. And plus there's an additional volume. I always say it's the same book, but it's actually 2 volumes. The 2016 edition, the updated edition. There's also the 1984 edition, which preceded the 2016 edition, and the 2016 edition contains most of the material that's in the 1984 edition. So I recommend the 2016 edition, but some people want the 1984 edition too, for some reason that, just people want it for some reason, even though the 2016 edition contains just about everything that's in the 1984 edition. But then there's another volume that's in addition to 2010, it came out in 2010, to the basic edition, and that is the Word Guide. Because, like today, I gave an example of word usage, communism, socialism. I always tell people I don't know what that is, but in the book, I say that's what you do. How, when people mention the word socialism, ask for an explanation. And that's just the way it's phrased in the book itself. When people use any type of word that you are not absolutely certain of what the person is saying, you have that person tell you what that means. Say, for example, if a person says, I'm a socialist, or I am a Christian, or I am a Republican, or I am a liberal, always politely, and always be polite, which is one of the directives in the textbook. Always be courteous. Don't let anybody be more courteous than you in a conversation, because that's what you want. You always want a courteous conversation, not an argument ever. Never an argument. Just a courteous conversation, whether you're talking to white people, non-white people, any people. Courteous conversation. This makes you a quality individual. You can build on that. But go to producejustice.com, and what will come up on the screen is the method for ordering the books. I say that if you have the books will help you a lot, I hope. I hope I'm well enough writer to get some points over.
All righty. Thank you, Vorp. Thank you, Derek. Some of them that have joined the conversation, thank you for your words. But right now we are going to go to the phone lines, and let me see if I can click it in here. Okay. David, you are on with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. What is your question?
Good morning, Mr. Bobby, Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I have a comment before I ask my questions, kind of lead up to the question.
Okay, go ahead, please, sir.
A video that a friend of mine, wife, sent to me was about a truck driver with a trailer full of FEMA coffins headed to Georgia. And also I listened to Joe Madison this morning, and he was saying that he said the governor of Florida said that God's waiting room is in Florida. And to my assumption, because I do know that there are three forms of lies according to the code. There's plain lies, damn lies, and the consensus. So when it comes to that, my question to Neely Fuller was, the signs that we see, the FEMA trailers headed to Georgia, the governor saying that Florida is God's waiting room, knowing that it's a lot of non-white black people in Florida. And he's saying that, and they have opened up Florida, to my assumption, because I saw some pictures of people on the beaches. Should we be presumptuous, or should we assume that this is a plan for more death for non-white people?
If that happens, then you can always assume the white supremacists came up with the idea, well, since we got this virus going, we might as well get rid of a whole lot of these black people while it's here. All right? They can't blame it on us. I mean, the viruses go around. They apply to everybody. All right? But what we can do, we can use black people's needs, what they think they need, like we always do, against them, which the white supremacist mind works that way. See, they'll say, hey, black people always blaming us for their condition and all like that. But, hey, if we just say, hey, you black people always talking about freedom, so You want to go where you please?
Go ahead.
And I'll open up some venues for you where you usually go, because you all love to hug and shake hands with each other and do a whole lot of grinning and jumping up and down and huddle together. You're not happy unless you're not huddling. You love to huddle, all right, even though you fight among yourselves as soon as you do huddle. So what I'll do is just see to it that you can go somewhere where you can really huddle, all right? You can really get together. Black people are always talking about we got to get together. Well, I'm going to let you all get together, and you all die together in about 2 weeks, because the virus is going around. The virus don't care. So it could be that that's the white supremacist plan, because that's how they think. And they're just about correct, because we usually do what they steer us to do, because they know how to do it. Because prisoners of war, generation after generation, what do we know? In answer to your question, very likely it could be. It may not be, but very likely, don't be surprised if we die like flies, all huddled together, because I'm tired of just sitting around, can't talk to nobody, can't go out, can't have no fun, like one of the earlier callers say, that black people always, the generation of black people we have now, always talk about how can I have some fun right now. I don't want to do nothing serious. I just want to have some fun. I don't care what it is, okay? So the white supremacists look at that and say, oh, okay. I'll give you a venue where you can go in this. You can finger pop all day, all right? But you're going to die tonight.
Okay. All right, David, did you have any more before I let you go?
Yeah, I had a comment, if you don't mind.
Go ahead, David, with your comment quickly, please, sir.
Yes, sir. I was thinking about this whole pandemic and how we are on a quarantine and how they have set it up to where now we have needs, like Neely Fuller just said. And I thought about the NFL a few years back where they was in trying to come to an agreement with a collective bargaining agreement. And what happened was the money started running out for the NFL players. So instead of holding out, getting everything that they wanted, they had to come back and be like, okay, we'll play. And then they didn't get a lot of what they wanted to get. So I feel like if you look at it in a codified manner, it's pretty much the same thing that's going on with us, because we have a lot of needs. They know this, so they're going to use that to their advantage so as to go out and then probably collectively get the virus or get more deaths for what they need or whatever, and then there you have it.
Interesting comment, David. Thank you. Hey, and don't be a stranger, okay?
Yes, sir.
All righty. Hey, by the way, you don't have to serve me. I'm very low on the totem pole. Let's see here. 516-453-9921 is the phone number that you can call to get in here. And I've been reminded to tell you, the callers, to make sure that when you call that number, press 1. And you will go to the very top of the caller list, and Mr. Fuller will take your call. So call the number 516-453-9921, and then hit that number 1 button. You'll go to the top. Let me make sure. Let's see here. Okay. Let's see, Ivory. Okay, Ivory. Let me see. We have about 4 minutes. Let me see, Ivory. Did you have another question? It says Ivory is back. Did you have another question, dear?
Interrupting my damn radio show for that shit.
Ivory.
Oh, hello. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I thought it was me. Okay. Did you have another question for Mr.
I do. Can I ask you a question?
We would prefer that you ask Mr. Fuller the question, because this is his thing. The spotlight has to be off of me and on him. But maybe I can. If you text me later, I can do it off air. But this is for him.
Well, it was just a question about him. Like, did he write the book, or did his father write the book?
You have to ask Mr. Fuller that. Mr. Fuller?
Oh, okay. Okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Fuller, about your book. Did you write your book?
Yes, every word.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I just heard another
I'm
caller.
Neely Fuller Jr. Neely Fuller Sr. would not have written a book like I wrote, in my opinion. Not at all. I mean, I think I know my progenitor pretty well enough to know that he would look at my book, and knowing him, he would just kind of read it, and maybe he would chuckle at a few things, and then he would roll his eyes at me, and then he would kind of put the book down on the table and go back to running his restaurant business. And if anybody asked him about the book, he would probably very modestly say, well, anything about my son's book, you can talk to him about it.
Oh, okay.
I think that would be his reaction to anything that he would make. He wouldn't give you any indication of anything, but I would know what it meant.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Ivory, again, thank you for calling, dear, and we appreciate it. Right. And as usual, don't be a stranger. Thank you, Ivory.
Thank you.
You are welcome. Mr. Fuller, in the remaining couple of minutes that we have, you have mentioned, I have heard you mention this on several occasions and on different radio formats, but there has been some people that didn't understand how you could be in the Army and Air Force. I don't know if you could do that today, but you had mentioned that you have been in both. Could you briefly explain that to the listeners who don't know about that?
Yes. I was in the Army for 2 years, drafted. One of the last people in the place that I came from who was eligible to be drafted, I think. I was 21 years old. I thought that I had escaped, you might say, quote, unquote. But they drafted me and sent me to Camp Chaffee, Arkansas, United States Army, and I went through 3 months of very fast basic training there. And they told us when we first got there that we were replacements, and that a replacement is a person who is replacing somebody who was recently dead in North Korea. And they had to get some more people up there to take the place of the people who are recently dead as fast as they possibly can to stop that gap, all right? Because everything had broken loose in 1951. That's when I was drafted in March. And after that 3 months basic training, I was given what they call delay en route, which amounted to about 30 days, in which case I could go back to my town where they had taken me from, Muskogee, Oklahoma. And then after those 30 days, I was on the USNX Marine Lynx on my way to Korea. They put me in Busan Harbor, if I recall correctly, and then we got on a train from there and went straight on up the line, right to the line, which is where I was. I was in the combat zone the whole time I was in Korea.
You was on the front line?
On the front lines in an artillery unit, 955th Field Artillery Battalion. And they immediately put me on the phones because they said I had a strong voice, which means I had to relay commands over the phone and over the sound of the guns. 155 howitzers make a lot of noise, all right, and shake the earth all around you, okay? So those are cannon, okay, howitzers. And so they fire about a 12-mile distance, or distances shorter than that. Most of the time, it was shorter than that. All right. Now, the other time was in the 50s. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I got to do this.
Yes, sir.
Listen, we have come to the conclusion of the first hour of the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr., and I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby, here. We're getting ready. We are getting ready to start the second hour of the Counter Racist Code Show, also called the CRCS, with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. We're talking, or rather, he's talking about codification. Codification. Every answer that you hear that he gives will be in a form or instructing us how we are to be codified as we are prisoners in this system of racism, white supremacy. So to get in contact with the show, call 516-453-9921. Press the number 1 button, and you will go to the top of the line, and Mr. Fuller will answer your question. Or if you prefer, you can Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, @gmail.com. And if I have time, I will read your Gmail, and if I don't, or when I do, I will give you the date and the time that your Gmail will be read so that you can hear it in your at your leisure. Okay, we're finishing up here. Mr. Fuller was talking about his how he was in the United States Army and the United States Air Force, which is I think it's impossible to do now, but at that particular time, he had mentioned that he had done that. Go ahead, Mr. Fuller, conclude that, please, sir.
Right. Okay, so I completed that tour, and I got out in 1952 in December of the Army. But then later on account of financial concerns, I bottomed out in the place where I originated from. Mm-hmm. And in desperation, I joined the Air Force. I volunteered. And at the time, everything was nice and quiet. I thought it was going to be. However, that didn't last long. But it lasted for the time that I was in, because Vietnam had not come up. This is right after Korea. Mm-hmm. We have heard of a place called Indochina. I heard about that when I was in the Army. And I wanted to get out of the Army. Before that, I had to face that, because I saw, hey, I don't know what that's going to be about. But back to Asia again, and President Truman had said, hey, he had told Douglas MacArthur, you don't want to get involved in Asia in a land war ever. Well, what are you doing? And if you don't understand that by now, as much as you have been around, I'm paraphrasing now what Truman said, who was the president at that time, talking to one of his generals, General MacArthur, said, I'm going to fire you, which he did. All right? He said, you're talking about setting foot in China. Now, that was when I was in Korea. Okay? So maybe indirectly, President Harry Truman saved me from being slaughtered, because that's exactly what was going to happen as close as I was to China when I was in Korea. So now in the Air Force, I'd heard that black people, they don't want them to do much of anything. They don't want them to be in the Tuskegee Airmen for sure. They don't want them flying planes. They got them doing that, but for the most part, they want black people to be on the ground doing what black people do best, manual labor, all right? So I said, that's okay with me, okay? That's in the back of my mind. So I joined the Air Force and wound up in a supply unit, which is what they said. That's where they put black people. They put them in supplies, all right, which means lifting and loading, trucks and handling supplies. They call that, just basically manual labor.
Yes, sir.
So that's where I was when I was in the Air Force. And during that time, that's when I started on a radar site stationed in Japan, high up in the mountains. That's when I started writing the first 6 pages of the code, because that was in the mid-1950s, and the Little Rock crisis has broken out, and we were getting word about that and what that was about. The Little Rock 9.
Yes. Okay.
And so I started writing about the race issue then.
Okay. All righty. There we have a little history for those that wanted to know just a little bit more about Neely Fuller's service to his military background, because he does mention that from time to time. Okay, on with the show. Mr. Fuller, this comes from Malasala, and I'm probably mispronouncing the name, but anyway, Malasala G says this: Mr. Fuller, do white supremacists, quote, weaponize, end of quote, all innocuous thought, speech, and action? And
do
by
white supremacists weaponize all...
wait a minute.
What does it say?
Let me get it back. Do white supremacists weaponize all innocuous thought and action? And I wanted to, you always said to look things up that you don't understand. So the word innocuous meaning not harmful or offensive. So they want to know, do they weaponize that?
Yes, if I understand the question, the white supremacists do everything with the intention of giving strength to the system of white supremacy. That's why they, in answer to one of the earlier callers, that's why they are so efficient. They really concentrate on their business more than anybody else on the planet. They concentrate on what they believe in most. They think about it all the time. They weaponize everything. The white supremacists love every type of weapon that there is, whether it's a chemical weapon, and they're crazy about guns, even when they have absolutely no use for them. Just stack them up anyway. Manufacture them, stack them up, and go out to the barn and open it up and look at them in racks and racks and racks and racks, and just check them out and oil them and grease them and take them down and take them apart and put them back together again and look at them some more and then take them out and do some more shooting at targets and whatnot, usually black targets, all right? That's why the usual target, the traditional target is what? Circles with what? What they call a bullseye.
A bullseye,
okay,
yes.
And the bullseye is black, mostly. Sometimes it's green, but most times it's black. Try to hit that bullseye, okay? So when you see something in the form of a person that looks like that bullseye, your mind automatically tells you what from your training. Draw your gun and open fire and make sure you hit it. Dead center. Dead center.
Mm-hmm.
Every time. Don't waste a shot. I mean, that shot shouldn't go anywhere, but right in that bullseye, right in that Negro's head.
That is very
They weaponize everything, including words.
Okay. All right, Malice, you have your answer, and thank you for your question. Okay, Mr. Fuller, let's see here. Let's go to this Gmail. This is from Rachel G. She says this: Hi, Mr. Fuller. I am an attempted parent. Children, should we tell them that their purpose is to produce justice and be constructive? How can we say this or teach them this in the simplest way? That's question number one. For our boys, should we shelter them till adulthood? She has in parentheses, like keep them home or putting them in after-school programs or accompanying them to places. So for our boys, should we shelter them till adulthood? That would be the second question. So let's go back to the first question. I'm a tempted parent. For all children, should we tell them that their purpose is to produce justice and to be constructive? How can we say this or teach them this in the simplest way?
Just by the things that they do each day. Everything is constructive or non-constructive. And you put it in the form of a question because of what? Questions make people do what? It makes people think. when you make statements to people, or when you act bossy, or you're telling people what to do, you're not making them think. You're causing them to be resentful. But when you just ask Lou Jr., whatever, or Gloria, or whatever her name is, Kamani, you ask him, Johnny, is that constructive? This thing that you are doing right now, do you think that's constructive or non-constructive? Because everything is either constructive or non-constructive. And so this put everything in the form of a question. And that starts a child, a smaller child, because we're all children in the system of white supremacy. We have been kept in a childlike state, so that's what we are. There's no such thing as a black man and a black woman in the system of white supremacy. They don't exist, not one. That's a contradiction, if you say that, to the system of white supremacy. The white system of white supremacy makes children out of people of color, regardless of their age. It keeps them in a childlike condition, keeps them just lined up like children for everything, begging, because that's what children do. Children don't own anything. They're not in command of anything. So black people don't own anything nowhere on the planet. Nowhere on the planet in the year 2020. There's no such thing as a black person owning anything. Why? Because you don't own yourself. It's always a white supremacist that tells you where to go, what to do, what to learn, what a book is, what movies to look at, what is black culture, what is white culture. They dictate. And we, like prisoners of war, like children, just pass that on because we don't know anything else, because we're in that condition. So in order to get out of the condition, people often ask me the same question being asked now. What do you tell young people, Fuller? I say, you tell young people the same thing you tell old people. It doesn't have anything to do with age, but you make the important qualification of people of any age when you tell them anything. You tell them in such a way that they understand what you're saying, and that applies to people of any age.
Yes, sir.
A person can be 70 years old, and you're talking to him and say, well, I'm going to talk to you like you've grown, I'm not going to talk to you like a child. No, you talk to everybody the same way. And what is that same way? In a way that they understand what you're saying. Communication, that's all it is. It has nothing to do with age. Nothing. You tell them the truth. And you tell them in such a way that they understand it.
Okay.
Because if you start off lying to young people, starting with that Santa Claus thing, you're already setting the pattern for lying.
Okay. Now, specifically, she mentioned that for our boys, should we shelter them till adulthood? Sheltering like keeping them home or putting them in after-school programs or accompanying them to places. Should we just completely shelter them?
Well, it depends on what you mean by shelter. You try to shelter everybody by doing what? How do you shelter a person? You shelter them with information. Be ready to answer their questions. And if you don't know the answers to the questions, of which there will be many, say you don't know. But you would make an effort to find out or help them to find out, because that is sheltering. Information is sheltering. Sheltering is not hiding somebody in a closet and keeping them away from everybody else. Hey, you can tell them what to do and what not to do, and tell them why. Always tell them why. And tell them in a suggestive way. And then ask them what they think about it, what you just told them. Never tell anybody, 'cause I said so. And last but not least, while I'm thinking about it, this is very important. Don't try to teach young people by brutality. That thing about whipping young people into line, grabbing a strap, grabbing a twig, grabbing a whip, you're teaching them violence. The way you settle any kind of argument is with violence. You may not think you're doing that, but that's exactly what you're doing, whether they pick up on it or not, and carry it to its logical conclusion. But what you do is sit down and anything that you instruct, you're making suggestions, really. Just make suggestions to all people, regardless of age. Just call them around and say, are you ready to talk? I'm ready to talk to you. And if so sit down, I want to tell you something. And I want to start by asking you some things. And you can start by the questions that are on page 171 of the basic textbook. What do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? Well, I want to go outside and play. Well, why do you want to go outside and play? Because I'm tired of being inside. All right? Well, that's the reason. Don't argue about the answers that you get and all like that. And then you can just be ready with another question. Well, don't you think that studying and trying to get an excellent grade is more important than you going outside and playing? And then you come in, and then tomorrow when you go in, you won't have the answers to those questions that the teacher told you on this assignment. Now, which do you think is more important? And wait for the answer. And they'll tell you, yeah, well, I think it's more important for me to go outside and play. And say, well, but if you go outside and play, and then later on, when you go and look for a job, because you see people looking for jobs, what do you want to do? What do you want to be? Well, I think I want to be a firefighter. Well, you're going to have to know something about reading and writing, don't you think? See, put it in the form of a question. Let them do some thinking. That's the most important thing that you can lead anybody to do. Think.
All righty.
Because from thought comes everything else.
Okay. I got a question here. Let's see here. The question is this. It says, as he being you, as Mr. Fuller predicted, that the system of white supremacy would have black male actors in dresses back in the 70s. You did that back in the 70s. Anyway,
about 1972, I made a talk at Howard University at the Dr. Frances Crescent Wilson Institute.
Yes, sir.
That she set up there at the Blackburn Center. And I told people that seems like, I wasn't certain, I said, but that seems like the white supremacists, after all of the riots and whatnot of the 1960s, and then you're talking about 1972, I said, they are shifting their strategy toward what you call direct racism. Black persons, don't drink that water there. That's for white people only. Don't go in that restaurant. That's for white folks only. Sit here on the bus. Don't sit here. Sit on that back seat. Well, rear seat for colored. All right, that's how I came up. Okay, so the white supremacists say we're going to refine our strategy. Say what we'll do, we will slowly and methodically. We're not going to rush into doing it because they will be aware of what we're doing if we rush. All right, say, well, we will slowly start making black males, and we can start in the penitentiaries and whatnot because we already got plenty of them there. We can tell them that being an imitation female is an innocent thing to do and might even be a good thing.
The feminization of the black male is.
Yes, all right. So it's already been prevalent in the prisons. So a lot of black people had that experience. That's one of the first things that happens to them when they get into what you call a first-class prison, okay? even going way back to the 1920s and 30s, because black people got a lot of sexual energy. So they said, now we'll turn the black male into females, all right? That will do a number of things. It'll make them a frivolous people, okay, because all they'll be thinking about is fashions and all that type of stuff, and who's sleeping with who, and, you know, and make them real girlish, all right, what we traditionally call girlish. Mm-hmm. And then we'll take the black female and make males out of them. And that will cause what? Confusion. Which is what we thrive off of. If we can sabotage the black mentality sexually, we got them. We don't have to put them on the back of the bus. We don't have to do anything, because they will be on automatic. They will be ruined forever. If we can sabotage their sexuality, if we can confuse their sexuality so that they don't know and don't care if there's a difference between a male and a female, and it all becomes homogenized. They like what you call integration and all like that. So we'll just homogenize their sexuality so that you can't tell one sex from another. In fact, we'll have 15 or 20 or 30 different types of sexes. Now, at the time, in 1972, I didn't know that they were going to go beyond lesbianism and what we call homosexuality. Usually, back then, they called homosexual males homosexuals, and they called a homosexual female a lesbian. And those were the two basic categories. But then it became what? Gay, and then bi, and then trans, and then Q. That was added on.
Yeah,
they did it gradually. All right. And so eventually, I guess they'll have 5 or 6 categories for each one of the alphabets. Okay? And I have an illustration of that in the textbook for Victims of White Supremacy. That's 2016 edition. I have all kinds of things, bovinosexual. These are just words that I just thought up. Now, bovines refers to what? Cow.
That's a cow.
Sure, because I've understood that on some occasions, I heard this when I was a teenager, that on some ranches and whatnot, that actually it has happened, because just about in the history of the universe, just about everything has happened, that cowboys, sometimes they attempt to have sexual intercourse with a cow, okay?
Wow.
And there's a movie called The Last Picture Show, where a couple of boys in a small town in Texas, white boys sitting around talking, bored with nothing to do, said, hey, my uncle's got a heifer. Let's go over and take her home. Since we ain't got no girls around, all right? And they say that in that movie. Anybody? The Last Picture Show, 1972, I think it was. Oh, yeah, 74, somewhere. That's on my movie guide list. The Last Picture Show. And I understand in Australia, males out there in the outback for centuries have had what we call sex, because it's not really sex. You're just doing something with an animal, with sheep, because they're sheep herders.
Yeah.
And that was very common, I understood. I saw books many years ago that said that. I don't know if it's true or false, but I saw it. All right, I didn't know anything about that. But getting back to the point, the white supremacists said if we can confuse black people sexually, we will not have to confuse them in anything else. Everything will be easy. Because we mess them up sexually, they'll be messed up in all of the other areas of activity. They'll be messed up when it comes to economics. They'll be messed up when it comes to education, entertainment, politics, religion. Their whole religion will be upside down and inside out. All right.
Yes.
They already got them in the choir there and whatnot. So hey, we got the seed bed already planted. So we'll just push that and say this is a wonderful thing. This is what Jesus wanted you to be about. All right. I mean, let's Jesusify this thing, okay? And we will, anything political, anything that has to do with religion, anything that has to do with war, we'll have an assignment for them in war, and how will that work? And these are just ideas that I've thought up, and I see it coming to fruition.
I
didn't know that it would, but I thought there was a possibility.
Okay,
and,
well, she said, it said this also. It said that, it says, back in the 70s, he predicted this. It said, please correct me if I'm wrong. He says, is there anything else he could predict regarding sexual relations between non-white people right now, today in 2020? Now, I know you've made this statement that has just upset a lot of people, but you did make this statement. I have heard you make this statement, or a statement similar to that the white man's anus is the new vagina. Now,
the new black vagina.
Yeah, the new black vagina. Yeah, messes up a lot of people.
Yeah, because the white female vagina is the holy grail of all vaginas. That's where they're headed with this. The only vagina worth anything is going to be the white woman's vagina. The black female vagina is persona non grata. And what's going to take the place of the black female vagina is the white male anus. That's what I've said, and I stick with it. And I see all the signs. And I think if every black person just opens their eyes right there among their own family members and whatnot, they will see the signs. It's all there. I mean, they are going full tilt with this thing because they're putting the pedal to the metal on this sexuality thing. They got to have it because it'll cause more confusion among black people than anything else that they can do in economics, in education, even in religion, which you have a lot of confusion. And black people slaughtering each other all over the world just about religion. But, I mean, if you want to have black people confused in a nice, quiet, methodical manner, confuse them sexually, and you got them forever because everything else will fall right into that vat, right into that tragic end, right into that sabotage. This is war. So in war, you have saboteurs. So if you saboteur or commit sabotage sexually among the non-white people of the planet, you have sabotaged them in every other area of activity because it'll be connected to that sexuality. Sexuality is very powerful. People think about sex all the time, even old people, even if they're just reminiscing. They're thinking about it, what they used to do. You hear old guys sitting around talking about what they used to do when they were young. Some of them still trying to be playboys, even though they'll play it out. Okay? So it's always there. Sex sells.
Mm-hmm.
The white supremacists understand this.
Mm-hmm.
Get control of the sexual mind of the non-white people of this planet, and you can sit back and put your feet on the desk. You'll have them under your control forever if you control their sexuality.
Okay. Let me ask you this, since you made that statement. You mentioned in this particular section that we're speaking of, you mentioned the word homogenized. Now, when I was coming up, the first time I heard that word was with homogenized milk. But at that time, I wasn't trained to ask the question, what is homogenized? But when I did look it up, it mentioned something about, I got to do this, and I'll come back to this. You are now listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., and I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. By the way, that wasn't a tease. I really had to go to break here. You can get in contact with the show by calling 516-453-9921, and make sure you press the number 1 button, and you will go to the top of the line, and Mr. Fuller will address your questions. Otherwise, you can do this. You can Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, B-O-B-B-Y, at gmail.com, and if I get a chance to, I will read your Gmail, and I will also give you the date and time that I have read your Gmail so that you could go back and play it back if you are otherwise working or whatever that you may be doing, sheltering in place or during this house arrest or whatever. Yeah, you'll have a chance to listen to that. But yeah, 7 Mr. Bobby, BOBBY at gmail.com. The counter racist code shows CRCS 516-453-9921. Hit button number 1. You'll go to the top of the line. Okay. To show you that there wasn't a tease here, Mr. Fuller, the first time I've seen that word was on a milk carton. It said homogenized milk, but I didn't and wasn't trained in codification as I am being trained right now. I'm not fully there yet, but I'm being trained. But I did look that up, and it said make the same. It says in the process of milk is to process, which the fat droplets are emulsified and then cream does not separate. Milk is pasteurized or homogenized. Or number 2 says make uniform, similar. Should the role of law be should we be in homogenized society? Homogenize is to make something the same or similar. And so using that word that you used earlier, is that proper to, or since was this definition of homogenized, how did that come to be, in your opinion, related to sexual activities?
Well, it's connected with the word homo or homosexual. Homogenized,
make the
sexual.
Same, okay. Mm-hmm.
Yes, I mean, in other words, just pour it all in there together. There ain't no difference between male and female. That's just something somebody made up. There ain't no difference between a male and a female. When you're looking at a female, you're looking at a male. That's why they say female, all right? Now, she's a form of male. That's all, And so a male is the same as a female, and a female is the same as a male. What's the difference? And you can go further than that. I mean, when it comes, there ain't no difference between a sister and a brother. I mean, they're all the same. Dressing the same, have them act the same, switch around the same, And, hey, might as well throw the mother in there, too, and the father. See what I mean? Mass chaos, mass confusion, sexual sabotage. That's what's going on, folks, right before your eyes. And black people just grinning, most intelligent of black people, walking right into it, gleefully. And the white supremacists plan that too. Say, start with the intellectuals. Say, black people listen to their elders and whatnot. And white folks are doing it. That's the first thing we think about. And so, it must be all right. Must be some benefits. So let's jump on board. Let's get on it before it's too late, okay? Without backing off and saying, wait a minute, whose idea is this? Is this something we came up with? Now, we have always been aware of it, but I mean to parade it up and down the street and say that this is some type of new gospel, this is a new religion or a new part of old religions and going to become a part of every religion and going to become a part of, where we have Caligulaism, Roman emperorism, when it comes to sexuality in the churches, actually performing sex acts in the churches. We already got gambling now. Why not throw in sex? I mean, we talk about sex in the church, might as well have it in the church, right?
So why do you say the white male's
Isn't that
anus?
reasonable, folks? Let's take off your clothes. I mean, while we're praying.
Okay.
All right? And get it on.
Okay.
Finger pop. All right? Right there. Right there in front of the cross.
Okay,
right
let me ask you this.
Right there in front of the sun, moon, and star.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what we're going to, this is the way to go. This is exactly where the white supremacists are taking us.
Okay.
Believe it.
Now, to be clear, why do you say that the white male anus is the new black vagina, or however you phrase that?
Yes, that's how I put it.
Okay. Yeah.
Because what they're going to do with the black female, they're going to make soldiers out of them. And so, it's cheap for one thing. Put them in, it's going to be all kinds of fights breaking up all over the world. The white supremacists are saying, we're not going to lose our best people. If you look at a lot of the military guys, I mean, man, their teeth, and they're neat in their uniforms and all like that. I mean, they're crisp. They're very efficient at what they do, even doing this virus thing. When the military comes in, they're more efficient than people that's trying to throw something together. I mean, they work like clockwork. This is where they're going to take the black female. Take the black female and say, well, we ain't got no men, so I might as well marry my sister, which that's coming, where you can marry your sister. All right, after all, they say it's all about love. So we say we need more love in black families. Well, okay, what do you explain? How do you define love? They say, well, does love include sexual intercourse in the family? Well, why not? All right, ain't hurting nobody. Two women can't have babies, so you ain't going to be producing no retarded children. So, yeah, why not? Marry your sister and join the Army. Now, that's 2 paychecks going to the same family. See, they got it all figured out.
Yes, sir.
And if it's 3 people in the family, all of them join the Army, all of them march in the same unit together, all of them fighting all over the world. I mean, black people from here fighting black people in Ethiopia, okay? That's the way they got it all figured out sometime in the future, okay, and keeping the lid on over there, and have the Ethiopians doing the same thing because they'll fall in line too, okay, so white folks is doing it, okay, so it's okay, all right, and they'll die, mostly fighting each other, dark people fighting each other, and it's very little cost to the system of white supremacy.
Okay, all right.
They got that figure.
Okay, let me do this. I got Teddy, James, Rachel, and Mr. Fuller. I got 6 things to do, and how many minutes? I have 23 minutes. So let me do this. Let me go to Teddy. Let me click you in, Teddy, here. Okay, Teddy, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead with your question.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Bobby, and it's a pleasure talking with you, Mr. Fuller. I'm a first-time caller and first-time listener, and what a subject to chime in on this particular day. Mr. Fuller, I have got to ask you, we are black men and women in today's 21st century. Wouldn't you think that we should know better anyway? I mean, we should know that we should not have to engage in that kind of activity with men with other men, women with other women. Well, I mean, it's a given. So how is it that we just succumb to that kind of madness? And so I'm at awe at that. Would you comment on that? I'll listen. And just kind of also make room for other callers as they come in.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. And don't be a stranger, my brother. Okay, thank you,
I most
Teddy.
certainly won't be. Certainly won't be.
All right, Mr. Fuller?
Because we don't know any better. We are children. We are not men and women. That's the answer. The white supremacists raised us even before we were born. They had everything set in place. We don't have anything set in place. Black people don't have anything set in place for black people. We don't have any plans of any kind anywhere in the world. We wait for the white supremacists to tell us what's right, what's wrong, what's fashionable, what isn't, what to listen to, what not to listen to, what to consider valuable, what to consider non-valuable. People dying in the mines for what? Black people dying in the mines for what? Diamonds. In order to do what? In order to get diamonds to make them shine when they put on your finger. Now, that's a white supremacist thing. I mean, people dying? suffocating in mines in order to get some diamonds, and then you take the diamonds and make a ring and put it on somebody's finger and pay a whole lot of money for it in order to do what? Satisfy what has been told is something that you need. This is something that you people need. I need this diamond for what? To show off. Because black people are taught to do one thing, show off. Everything that we do is supposed to be designed to show off. Show off to whom? Who's looking? Other black people. Prisoners of war showing off their chains, shining to other prisoners of war. That's the way the white supremacists want it. That's how, in answer to your question, we fall into the trap. We get all of our desires from them. So now they're telling us what we should desire sexually. And we say, oh, okay, they make all of our plans. Why? Because we don't have plans for ourselves. That's why we need a code. We need a code.
Got it. Got 19 minutes. James, Teddy, they got you back on here. Did you have another quick question, or what's happening?
No, but I will call again, and I'm sure we will talk again. Thank you so very much for taking my call.
Again, don't be a stranger. Okay. Let's see. James, got you, bro. Go ahead.
Good morning, John.
James?
I'd like to start out by making a statement on the VGQ. And I'd like to mention that I don't know Mr. Fuller, and I don't know you, Mr. Bobby. However, I have read Mr. Fuller's material, and I've said this before. I strongly recommend that every victim of racism purchase his books, because I can't think of any other book that is better to offer suggestions about what to do about white supremacy. And that's just on the VGQ.
Okay.
Now, I want to ask Mr. Fuller a question. Mr. Fuller, has any of your ideology about white supremacy been influenced in any way by the teachings of Elijah Muhammad? Because back in the 50s and 60s, I've listened to some of his lectures, and he mentioned that black people were in prison. Also mentioned that black males were emasculated, and I've heard Malcolm X say the same type of things. And I never really, when I was in my 20s, when I first heard those old tapes and was watching those videos, I never really thought much of it. But when you mentioned it and you explained why that's so, then I said to myself, hey, maybe he was kind of influenced by those teachings. Was that the case?
The answer is yes. Elijah Muhammad, those are two words that you very seldom hear anywhere. Elijah Muhammad. You don't see it in print. There's a reason for that. Elijah Muhammad influenced black people to start calling themselves black more than anybody ever on this planet. Now, you might attribute that to different people and all like that. Some people say Malcolm. Malcolm popularized it. But Elijah Muhammad, in my opinion, was the seed of it. That's where it came from. Malcolm X was taught by Elijah Muhammad. People talk about Malcolm as pictures on the postage stamp in the northwestern hemisphere. Elijah Muhammad's picture's not on the postage stamp. Go figure. Okay? All right. I'm not going to get into that, but I mean, hey, go figure. Do some thinking.
Can I say something, Mr. Fuller? Can I say something real quick? I just think that your book is absolutely ingenious. And I will say this, and I don't want to hold you up too long. I know other people want to talk, but when I call, it's because I feel I have got to say things that I feel like can help solve this race problem. In his book, Message to the Black Man, Elijah Muhammad stated that in the future, there will be another book come out for black people that's going to replace, and I'm not trying to say you're trying to do it, that will replace other holy books. But for me, I'm speaking for myself. Your book is that book. Your book is that book because, like you say, that code, a code is what we need. So I appreciate your work, sir. I really do. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, James. And again, I want to tell you, but you know the drill. Don't be a stranger. Okay. Let's see, Mr. Fuller. Before we talk about your book, this comes from Rachel. It says this. Mr. Fuller, how do you help people to understand that being sexually confused is not a good idea? What if they really believe they are homosexual? What can you do to change that?
Oh, you change things by changing people's minds. But I'm not saying that there are a lot of people who are just born certain ways. I mean, there are people who are born all kinds of ways, not just when it comes to sexuality. Everybody, no two people are exactly alike, even when it comes to just plain what you call male-female sexuality. That's all messed up in the system of white supremacy. So actually, when you talk about just black males with black females, that's not an example for anybody to follow in the system of white supremacy. Everything about black people in the system of white supremacy is all messed up. I'm talking about the very best that black people parade around saying, now this is an example of how black people should be. No, it isn't. We are nowhere near the quality of people that we should be, that the Creator has produced on what we call the planet Earth. No one is, black and white, white and non-white. We are all so loaded with flaws that it's hardly worth mentioning that anybody should brag about anything, white people or black people. We talk about pride, that word shouldn't even exist among any people anywhere on this planet here in the year 2020. No people should stick out their chest and say, I'm proud of who I am. I'm proud of myself. And no people should say that they are proud of anyone else that you're looking at, because we fall so short of where we ought to be. That's why in the code book I say we should be aiming to become universal man and universal woman, and there are none in existence. We don't have any of the characteristics of what we should be, not one, none. So no black person should walk around talking about black pride, or no white person talk about being proud of anything. Proud of what? Look at this mess. Look at the diseases and all like that. That's all caused by us, the people on this planet. And going back, you talk about black history and all like that, none of that is an example to follow. None of that. And white history, forget it. None of it is worthy of anything except historical mention. I mean, we are nowhere near the quality of people that should inhabit this wonderful planet called the planet Earth. Nowhere near. When I say we, I'm talking about everybody.
Okay.
And we should set a standard that's so high. I mean, hey, it's like they say, what's that song, The Impossible Dream? That we should set a standard so high 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 that we sho
Yeah, during the possible.
Yes,
yeah.
that's what we should be reaching for, because we ain't nowhere near being the quality. The code calls it quality people. We're nowhere near being quality people.
Okay. This is what I'm going to do. I got 3 questions, but I have to do this right here. Mr. Fuller, could you speak briefly about your book, how we can get it, and all that, and then I'll ask those last 3 questions. Go ahead, please, sir.
You can get the book by going to producejustice.com. And in appreciation of the former caller, I say I appreciate his appreciation, but you can get it you can get the book by going to producejustice.com. But my own evaluation of my own book is that this is just another book, and that is, in my opinion, of my own book, is one of the best of the worst written books on counter-racism that you will find. That's my evaluation of my own book, telling the truth. It's one of the best, but it's one of the best of the worst written. I don't write very well. I should write at the 5th grade level. People will understand it better. But I'm all over the place in this book. The book is not well written, in my opinion. It could be written better. Of course, people might say that anything could be written better. But go to producejustice.com. But I don't say, in my opinion, that this is the ultimate book. Every person is supposed to be writing his or her own book for him or herself. That's what the book itself says. You don't follow Neely Fuller. You go beyond Neely Fuller. See, that's what I want people to do. This is just a step. You got rungs on the ladder. You don't keep backing up on the same rung when you're climbing a ladder. You're trying to get to the top.
That's right.
So you just make another rung in the ladder.
That's
so
right.
You use one rung in the ladder to produce another rung, and the next rung in the ladder. In other words, anybody who's out there writing a code book now, because there's a lot of people doing that, don't write what Neely Fuller wrote. Neely Fuller's already written it. Okay? Just buy Neely Fuller's book and then write something that Neely Fuller ain't even thought of. That's the way we get where we need to be. Because he ain't nowhere near where we need to be. Not Neely Fuller, not nobody.
All righty. For those that are listening, and Neely Fuller and myself and my producers, especially Moon Pie, who's listening, and making sure that we are on par, and Robert, his brother, thank you so much. There is if you want more of Neely Fuller, he has other platforms, but someone, my friend Darrell, sent me a link where Mr. Fuller and I believe it was Dr. Randy Short were speaking on YouTube about the subject of hot air. And Mr. Fuller, I just want to say I have never heard you so animated about that, but it was very good. And for those who just cannot get enough to hear the wisdom dropped by Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. and Dr. Randy Short, I would make this suggestion. You might want to just look at that and see what's going on and hear Mr. Neely Fuller talk about what we're talking about today, which is codification. And it was just emphasized so greatly. So check that out. It's called, it was about hot air, and you'd have to get it to see, but it was on YouTube. They said Dr. Neely Fuller, but Mr. Fuller does not like, and he will tell you that he is not a doctor, but it was
never cured anybody.
Yeah, yeah, and Dr. Randy Short, who is a doctor. Anyway, that's on there. Okay, now let me get to this question now. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. Got 6 minutes, Brother Nizel, so let me say this. He says, Dear Mr. Fuller, in this exact order, he says, number 1, do you have a definition for forgiveness? And then, number 2, his reason for not providing this definition in the Word Guide. And then the last one, still remaining on the context of forgiveness, Does Mr. Neely Fuller agree or disagree with the term made popular by Michelle Obama of, quote, when they go low, we go high, end of quote?
Well, that sounds like a metaphor. When they go low, we go high. So it comes down to one word, two-letter word, do. By doing what? All right? So in raising that question, if I was talking to Mrs. Obama, that would be my question. What does she mean when she says, when they go low, we go high?
Okay.
My question would be, Mrs. Obama, in a conversational manner, courteous manner, by doing what? And I would try to get her to enumerate the things that we do in order to be on that high level, quote, unquote.
Okay.
That's the procedure. Right. That's the codified procedure.
That's codified procedure. Okay.
Right.
All right.
You just
now,
ask for detailed information. It says that all through the textbooks.
Okay. What is your definition of forgiveness? Or
I don't have one.
Okay, don't have one.
I use the vague one, which it is vague. I just simply say that the white supremacists should never be forgiven. That's the only time I've used that term, is in that context. That whatever you mean by forgiveness, the white supremacists should never be forgiven for what they are doing right now in 2020 to black people's sexuality. They should never be forgiven for that. That's one of the most horror. That is a horror story. I mean, right before our eyes. That is unraveling every minute of the day, everywhere. I mean, and they are doing it right in our faces.
Right in our faces, yes.
And we don't recognize it for what it is, I think, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, it could turn out in the future that actually they were doing us a whale of a favor when they start sabotaging black people sexually.
Okay.
It might turn out that way, but I don't think so.
Okay.
I think this is one of the most dangerous, one of the most horrific things that they have ever done.
Ever done. Let me get this last question in here. Let me get this last question in here. Okay, wait a minute. Caller, I don't have your name quickly. Do you have a question for Mr. Fuller? Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, caller.
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead. Quickly. For Mr. Fuller, go ahead. Okay, once, twice. Okay, I tried to give it to you, but you didn't have your name over here, so I don't know who you were, so I couldn't give it to you. Mr. Fuller, we have about a minute and a half because I'm looking at now 2 minutes it says. So.
Hello.
Okay, wait a minute. Okay, did you have a question? Well, that's me. Wait a minute. I don't see his name up here. Okay, anyway, go ahead. Yeah, his name is not up in here, so I can't do that. Mr. Fuller, in the remaining moments that we have, did you have anything you want to add to before we close the show out for this week?
Well, since we are in the middle of this virus, now people might want to know what do we do? Help everybody. See, that's what the code is all about, doing the most constructive thing. So since black people and white people, regardless of who might be manipulating what, and regardless of how anybody might feel personally, get on code by doing what the code book says. Floods, fires, hurricanes, everybody should help everybody that's right there in front of them that needs help, regardless of who it is, regardless of the age or what the color they are and all like that. Give them maximum help if you can.
Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Thank you, callers. Sorry, we just happened to run out of show. But you have been listening to the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. I'm your co-host, Mr. Bobby, also called the CRCS, full of mistakes and everything else. But that's the way we like it. Go live with that. Hopefully, we will see you next week. Again, thank you, Mr. Fuller. Thank you, callers. Don't be a stranger.
Thank you. ProduceJustice.com.